The United Nations contains some of the best data in the world about the biggest problems that we are facing as humanity. And the way that they want to tackle this are through the Sustainable Development Indicators. What are these? These are 17 goals that we must reach by 2030 to create a more humane, more sustainable society, which is great for all people, no matter where they are in the world. So these include items such as ending poverty in all its forms everywhere, building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization and foster innovation, and reduce inequality within and amongst countries, and many more. Now, I don't have time to dive into all of these for this video, so I'm going to just choose one example and really pull it apart and show how you can use really simple Excel techniques to get meaning from this data that you might think would be impossible otherwise. It doesn't matter if this is the first time you've done anything like this, you'll find it a breeze and hopefully find it very rewarding. So I'm going to choose the first goal as an example, which is going to be ending poverty in all its forms everywhere. I've chosen my target of by 2030, eradicating extreme poverty for all people everywhere, currently measured as people living on less than $1.25 a day. So by opening this up, you can see I've got two data sets here, which is employed population below international poverty line by sex and age percentage, or proportion of population below international poverty line. Now the two there are quite different because one's about just everyone. So that includes people who are in working poverty and includes people who are living on the streets unemployed. I'm going to look at employed poverty because I think that's a very interesting thing. Now, think to bear in mind that if you're doing any kind of research, any kind of infographic design, you name it, you've got to know what you're looking for before you go looking for it. So I'm looking at poverty issues. I'm thinking about gender equality. I'm thinking about age inequality. I'm thinking about international differences. I'm thinking about all that kind of thing. So this data looks like it's going to be very interesting for me. The other thing to remember is that when you're looking for any kind of data, you've got to be open-minded. So when you find a data set, you go, does this make me think of anything else, anything different? Could I actually expand what I'm doing by focusing on something I find in the data set? Maybe. So I'm about to download this, but before I do that, I've got two more things to think about, which is what's the geographic region I care about. By default, it's going to give you everything. And everything is, about world data. It's going to give you about least development countries. You can both think about landlocked countries, small land countries, developing regions, whatever. Now, I can filter here. I can choose different regional groupings or other groupings, but I'm just going to go for everything because I want to show you how simple techniques can help even the most complex looking data set become easy. The other thing to think about is the year. Now by default you get everything from the year 2000 onwards, but maybe you care about the last decade because something happened in 2010 and they go, what's been the impact of that since then? But again, I'm going to get all the data, all 9,171 data pieces. Now that might feel really, really large, but because we're using Excel and we're going to use pivot tables, you're not even going to notice it. It'll be as easy if it was 10 pieces of data. In fact, it just gives us confidence that this data is going to give us a reliable answer. So what I'll now do is now select everything. I'd click on download. Now I could have selected on every bit of data from and downloaded everything, and that will take a long time. But because we only got one piece, it's quite easy. I can just open this piece here. So here we go. I'm just going to open this up in Excel, go full screen, and here we are. So straight away, it might feel a little bit daunting, but you do not have to worry. Once you get your head around a few concepts, this is going to be an absolute breeze. So let's talk you through the first parts. The first three columns are just the goal target indicator. Now we're looking at ending poverty in all its forms. So remember I opened up the first one, then we had a target, then sub-indicators. That's all that means. So you can just ignore that part. Series code, again, that's just a UN data thing. Ignore that. It's this fifth column that starts to tell us interesting things, which is the series description. This tells us what the data is all about. Now we know that already because we downloaded the data saying, I want that data. But this really confirms it. It is the employed population below international poverty line by sex and age. The same title. Now that means that when we get to this column I, where it says value, I know what that means because this is about a percentage below the poverty line who are employed. So that must be 32.1. We need more data on that, so we've got to look at more areas. So geocode area, don't worry about this. This is just a number which relates to each country or region of the world. How to know what each number is? The next column tells me. So we can see that number 1 is world, and if I just zoom down here randomly, 270 is Gambia. So we can just sort of pretty much ignore column F, the area code, and just go on the name. H, time period, just the year it happened. And we can see that we have multiple records for each year. That's really great because we can really drill down into what things are. So the value is how many people live below. Time detail, again, same as year. These are blank, so ignore them. Source, where the data comes from. So you can reference that if you really want, or I would just reference the UN data as a website. Footnotes just tells us things about that, but there's nothing in there. Nature, let's have a look at this. Filter, go across. We only have E and M. Now you could Google what that means, but I know for that what I want to do, it doesn't mean anything. Unit, again, that relates to value, so we know it's about percentage. This is just confirming it. If we drop down, it only has percent, so we can just ignore that. This is where it starts to get interesting. So we've got age. The age ranges are 15 to 24, 15 plus, 25 plus. So I've got to think, well, what does that really mean? Now, if you're 15 plus, you could be 15 to 24, or you could be 25 plus. Looking at the data here, we can see that it's not a clear-cut way that males go into one category, females another, both another. So it's a bit messy. Just got to bear that in mind. What's this one? Just G, so if it's only one value, you can kind of ignore it. Reporting type, so just ignore that. And then finally, our last one is sex. So we've got male, female, and both. So when you think about it, it actually is quite simple what this stuff means, even if there's a lot of it. Now let's use pivot tables to drill into this and get some answers about what's happening in the world with inequality. We're going to do this really fast. So I'm not going to go over the details of pivot tables in depth. If you are new to pivot tables, I'm going to link in the description below to a video I've made about pivot tables. Go and watch that. I'm going to talk you through everything that you need to know to use them effectively, and then come back to this video and carry forward if you find it hard to follow. But anyway, let's jump in and get this done. So I'm going to select all the data and go insert pivot table. Everything's selected, new sheet, just so I like it. Click OK, and here we are. Let's think about what we care about. So the value is obviously going to be the value because that's what we're here for. It's the percentage of population who are working and unemployed. So I can just click on that there, and it naturally goes into there. So click on the I, give me the average. Now, what do I care about? I care about, let's say, the country. So let's say geo name, put it into rows. So this tells me that Albania has an average poverty rate of 53.8, let's say 54% of people who are working are living in poverty. Whereas when we go to Algeria, it's 0.1. So Algeria is definitely a better place to be. Angola, 29% of people, etc. Now I could just go in here, insert charts. Let's put a bar chart in, make that a bit bigger so we can all see what's going on. And this is not overly useful. Firstly, it's quite small, even if I zoom in. And I can hover over things and see that different countries, different rates, probably Congos, whatever. It's difficult to use, so what I need to do is sort this into a way which makes a lot more sense. And so for that, I need to sort the data. So how do I do that? Now, there's a really simple way. Just click on your pivot table here, and we have the top right sort and filter. I'm going to choose largest to smallest, and there we are. It just sorts all the countries for me, and I can see that Democratic Republic of Congo is the highest with 83.6% of people who are working are in poverty. And at the very bottom, let's zoom right down, we can see that Republic of Korea has 0. Interesting. Then Bosnia has 0.48. So that is really, really good. And we got this chart which now looks pretty nice. We could zoom in and try and find ourselves a benchmark. we see that the world is somewhere here at about 16.6. So we can maybe draw a line across that and say if are you below or above the world average. So that's already quite an interesting chart. We could put that in. One problem with this is that it's got too much data. So when I just drop down here, I can see that we have lots of countries. That's really good. I also have some things that don't make sense. So I don't know what country that is. It looks French, but it's not French. Then we also got regions as well as countries. So Central Asia, Central and Southern Asia, they're not countries. These are regions. So I'm going to filter them out if what I want are countries. Now, similarly, I could unselect everything apart from regions, and then I can have a small chart, which makes more sense, maybe, depending on what I want to find and look into. So I'm going to leave that there as now. But what I want to do now is do something more interesting. So I want to see how things have changed over time, because we do have that time element. So for this, I'm going to make it nice and simple. I'm just going to unselect all the countries and choose one country, which I think would be interesting, which is going to be, I'm going to choose China. And so that gives me the average of 12.29%. But is that all the story? Because we've got best part of 18, 19 years worth of data. So I need to go up to my field name, look at my time period and drag that into, selected there, but drag that time period into columns. So here we go. Let's zoom out so we can get a better look at this chart. Now, that gives me a bar chart of how poverty has changed. Now, bar charts are better for categorical data, whereas what we're talking about here is time data. So I'm just going to go into design. What's it? Format. It's design. And change chart type. I'm going to choose line. And there we go. Average value, GName area. So I'm going to change. There we go. So just by moving things around, the axis is now time period. We can see that in China, go back to year 2002, we had a relatively high percent, about a third of all people in China were working and living below $1.25 a day. So that's quite high. And we see that over the last 15 years, so it's gone to almost nothing. We're now on 0.95. So it's really small. Is that perfect? No, we've still got some way to go. But the idea of hitting that target by 2030 for China is very realistic. We can then get more interesting in this, going, well, we've got China in there, but what about other countries? So let's just choose, I'm going to choose something really random, absolutely no, Russian Federation. Let's choose them. Now, the data on there is different. So we can see that the Chinese data doesn't go back as far as the Russian data, and it's got interruptions. So we can change chart type. I'm going to go for one of these guys. So we see individual points. So China has had this really dramatic drop in rates, whereas Russia started off low and went and carried on low. Let's choose someone else. Let's take Jamaica. So what's Jamaica like? Close it down. Jamaica as well, also very, very low and changing. I'm trying to find something interesting here. Albania. Actually, we can also just select all. Let's have a look at that. This is going to be very, very crazy. This gives us the whole global trend. Now, seeing everything like this is only good if you really want to kind of go, well, does anything sort of stand out? This line there, which is Sub-Saharan Africa, we've really seen great. That's too messy and too detailed, but you might have seen some line which kind of goes straight down. It's just this one sounds interesting, which is Cambodia. Anyhow, there we are for that, and delete that chart. And I'm going to now take time period out, just take up there, move GName back to rows. Now I'm going to think about gender. So we move sex into columns. So here we go. I care about male and female differences. Take off blank and take off both sex. So there we are. I'm not really going to filter out all the other stuff because, it's just going to take too long. But you know that I showed you now, you know what to do. So actually, I'm going to filter that. I'm going to change my mind. So I'm going to look at changes. Let's stick with China. That's Chile. That's China. Let's go for, do we have Korea in here? Yep, Republic of Korea. That's good. Another country I'm going to choose. Is Mongolia in there? Yeah, I've got Mongolia. So for some reason, I've got these countries I've chosen. I like them for this. So there we are. Actually, Korea, it's got a 0, so it's very boring. Anyway, let's stick with these as just an example anyway. You know what you're looking for in your own data. Let's stick in another bar chart. Have a look at this. And we can see that interestingly, in China, for the last 20 years, if we just have it like that, we've got female employment, so female working poverty being slightly higher than male working poverty. But in Mongolia, which if you don't know is the country just north of China, the male working poverty is higher than the female working poverty. That might ask different questions about what are the employment rates in Mongolia and China between genders. Is it that China is a more fair society where women and men both work, and Mongolia is more of a men working country? I don't know. So this is the kind of thing where it's asking more questions. I'm going to show you one more thing before we can look into this because I want to drill further in. I'm going to take time period and move it into filters. Now, this gives me the option to say, well, what years do I care about? At the moment, I'm caring about all the years. So let's deselect this. And I'm going to select just the year 2000 up to 2010. So we can see, go back to the first quarter of my data, the first 5 years data, then that trend still exists where Mongolia is where it is. But you see that China has about 25 or 28% working poverty, whereas Mongolia has much lower, about 7%. If I change this again, I'm going to look at the last 5 years of my data. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We see a very different story. We see how China is now at this 1.4-ish percentage working poverty, whereas Mongolia is down to 0.1. So breaking down a time period between genders is much more effective than just looking at the last 20 years because such massive changes have happened. Now, China has changed a lot more than Mongolia has, but we see the trends. We could go further in this. We could add more filters. We can say, well, what do we have? I want to care about age. Okay, put that into filters. Okay, I'm looking at the last 5 years data for those 15 to 24. Okay, that's what it looks like. It's China's working poverty is zoomed up quite a bit, whereas male working poverty is zoomed up, which wasn't there before. Let's look at 25 plus, and okay, it's quite interesting how for the last 5 years, if you're 15 to 24, your more males have a higher level of working poverty than females, and if you're 25 plus, then females have a higher rate of working poverty than males. That might suggest that males have higher salary rises in the last 5 years compared to females. Which could account for the age issues. This asks more questions, but you can't see how I can now write questions down as I'm going. I can go back to my UN data. I can say, right, do any of the data sets available, maybe in some of the other indicators for Group 1 poverty, give me data that might look at this so I can start drilling in and exploring bits. It's always good to write down what you're doing as you're going because you might see something and then go, oh, I've forgotten about this. If you just saved a pie chart, or saved a bar chart, or saved a line chart, it can be quite hard to remember what you did to create that. So screenshots as you go is a great way to record things. But hopefully you're seeing that even though we have a very large data set that's very complex and a bit overpowering, using pivot tables, that data, you really tame it and it becomes very achievable. You start to get very detailed, insightful, and interesting insights without having to know any formulas, which is a really powerful thing, especially if you're just starting out in data analysis. Now, if you've found this video useful and interesting, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. If there's something that you need help with, there's a question that you've got about data analysis or design, leave a comment and I'll get back to you, maybe even make a tutorial just to help you. I've been Dr. Chris Parker for Design eLearning Tutorials. Thank you very much.